Shoot the Breeze. Topic number 1 says, Reshaping Nigeria's public image. Government nationalizes cartoon content for children. Do you agree or disagree with this move? This came with a link that's going to take us to YouTube. As always, we'll watch the video and then we'll discuss it.
Nigerian children singing songs of unity, hope, and patriotism at the Unveiling and Rebranding Nigeria Initiative Conference, which held at the nation's capital, Abuja. Nigeria, Nigeria. Themed Rise Up Patriot, it's a gathering of reputable statesmen proven with integrity who appeal to the consciousness of their fellow countrymen to be positive and project admirable characters that will give Nigeria a good name in the international community.
That if you realize what Nigeria is as a country, it is not difficult to love Nigeria because many people love to hate Nigeria. Why? Because Nigeria is something else. Nigeria cannot be stopped. In spite of our problems, in spite of everything, Nigeria is still standing.
What that means is, henceforth, for the next 3 years, we want to raise the content produced here in cartoons about us, about our values, about our tradition and culture, to at least 70% of the content our children are consuming. So that means there will be a lot of investment into animation. So on the 30th, 31st of October and 1st of November in Lagos, there's a festival of animation, creators. 26 countries are participating, so we will be there.
A patriot should be a fully rounded citizen. You must respect your heritage, you must take pride in your history and culture, but you must also be a citizen that obeys the laws, a citizen that votes, because if you don't vote, you are already creating the condition for reckless people to get into public positions of responsibility, and to create more problems rather to solve fundamental needs and aspirations of the citizens.
A former Nigeria International Olympic gold medalist, Emmanuel Babanyaro, frowned at the negligence in the use of sport to promote patriotism to project a positive image for the country.
Whenever we're on the pitch, it's not just us playing. We're representing over 200 million people. You see, that patriotism is being implanted into your head. It's called orientation. That's why you see the average sports person is naturally very patriotic, irrespective of what he or she is going through. You understand? You've never had an athlete ever, no matter his or her complaint, saying, "Oh, I regret representing Nigeria." It never happens.
The Rebrand Nigeria initiative is expected to change this negative perception to a positive one. In Abuja for News Central, I am Emmanuel Bagudu.
So that's pretty cool. I think it's a wonderful idea personally that your children's content, children's media should be reflective of your own culture, value, and outlook. So I think that's a good thing personally. But let me hear from my panelists what their thoughts are. Let me start with Oni. Oni, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I kind of wish that they showed us what they meant about the cartoons. I was kind of waiting for that. Because like I said, I mean, initially I'm like, if it's Nigeria, you know how. But but like they don't really give too much detail, just some sort of patriotism, which on its surface isn't that bad. When I was younger, I wrote I think it was like one of those essays that I liked. It was about how like long story short, it's like how essentially Nigeria, of all the countries in Africa, is in the best position to be what we would call a superpower, right? But as it stands right now, it's very divided and also very religious, and most like a great number of coons are in Nigeria, So that said, it's like, yeah, if I I don't know what these cartoons are, right? And it's really hard to mess up on cartoons, but the reality is that, let's say you have a hyper religious government, you have a hyper white, quote unquote white supremacist population. If the cartoon is like that, the people are cooked. Now, maybe the cartoon won't be like that, but that's why I kind of wish they like showed what the values communicated in the cartoon were, because as it stands, if you like see some like hardcore cooning on let's say the TL, or just hardcore cooning opinion, it's almost like at this point it's like 9 out of 10, or even I would say like 8 out of 10. Like the person is Nigerian, and that's it.
I appreciate that, Oni. Let me just say this in the chat. Hot Shorty Podcast is out there saying peace, fam. Salute to the panel. Greetings to the chat. Thank you for being here. Trigger Happy 262 Plus says our media needs to be good, and that requires control. Content is important too, but the issue is Nigeria is neo-colonial, kind of what Oni was saying in another way. Jose is out there saying peace, fam. Jose says good move, depending on the mindset of the animators. That's a good point. Bakari told me to get it right so I could teach him how to do it. So those are some good comments. Thank you for that. Let me hear what Black Steel has to say about reshaping Nigeria's public image. What are your thoughts, Black Steel?
So, this is kind of a difficult question for me because Nigeria has been in the news recently for some of its human rights abuses. There was a story recently where they locked up several school children who were protesting the high cost of food. They put down riots violently. They suppressed the will of the people in many cases. So, to me, this seems like they're trying to put sugar on a turd in many ways. So, I don't think there's anything wrong with cartoons and controlling the content. But my question is, if you're not going to do anything to improve the society, right? You can't sit up here and we're going to put these cartoons for content because the conditions for the people are still the same. So I think that if they're not doing anything to really address the problems of the country, who cares about these cartoons and trying to instill patriotism? And there's something Malcolm X said. He said, "Don't be so blind with patriotism that you can't face reality." Right. So many times, speaking from American standpoint, some people are so patriotic, they love America so much. They used to say, "My country, right or wrong." Right. I'll never apologize to the United States of America. And that's just Americans, just arrogance. We want people to be able to critically analyze their country. If their country's going the wrong way, they need to be able to speak out freely and address it and try to solve the problems that affect the country. Not just, okay, put these cartoons on for the kids so that way, they'll be able to have pride in their country and be patriotic. But if you're not dealing with the problems the children are facing, who cares about these cartoons? That to me is a problem. And many times we're so busy trying to shape the image of the country that we're not dealing with the problems that exist within that country. Nigeria is not exempt, but we're just talking about Nigeria right now. So that's my thoughts on it. I think that, to me, if you're not going to try to improve the conditions for the people, if you have a president that siphons money away from government institutions and resources and government programs, and the cost of inflation makes it so high people can barely afford to live. This is, to me, who cares? Who cares about the cartoons? Let's deal with some real life, some real issues. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
That's a good point. I can't deny that point. My follow up question, you Black Steel, would be: what if they were working on a lot of the ills of the society, as well as doing this for the children in an African centered way too. Because I also understand Oni's point of it'd been nice to kind of see what design language you're using, what kind of content you're pushing. But let's say they were tackling the issues, or at least trying to tackle the issues at hand, and they were putting out some not just Nigerian centered but African centered content that will kind of help the children to grow up to be problem solvers, to deal with the problems that their country has. How would you feel about it then?
Well, that would be good. That would be good if that was the case. I think that would be a great idea. I just want to make sure that it's something that's done for the people instead of, hey, you know what, don't focus on the problems of the society and make it so bad. I think one thing that stood out to me is that it's usually the young people that are on the front lines with these protests. It's usually the children, the teenagers. They're the ones that are usually at the forefront of any movement. And if you're not going to create a country for these children to thrive. So when they grow up, they can use their intelligence and their skills to enrich Nigeria instead of taking their knowledge and moving elsewhere. Then what's the point of watching these cartoons? They're going to watch these cartoons, and when they get old enough, they're going to leave Nigeria because they're going to they're not going to be able to find jobs. They're not going to be able to deal with the corruption. They're not going to be able to deal with the lack of food or resources. So it's got to be hand in hand. You got to deal with the society and make it better for the kids. And then if you want to push the your programming, that's perfectly fine and good. But you got to deal with the reality that people in Nigeria are struggling, and these cartoons, they're not really going to do anything. I mean, if I was a kid, I'm hungry. I'm gonna cut this shit off. I'm hungry. That's what the kids are protesting. When they got arrested and they were charged with terrorism of all things. So they've been released now, but to me, I think that this is just an issue of them wanting to sanitize their image. All right, you got to deal with the reality of the situation first. That's my thoughts on it.
Appreciate that, Black Steel. Let me see. Oni, would you add anything to what Black Steel had to say?
Yeah, I'm reminded of a cartoon called Akili. I don't know if you guys heard of it, but Akili is,
Yeah.
I think it's a Tanzanian cartoon. And it is, has a lot of educational content, has a lot of sharing, a lot of good lessons. And sometimes, occasionally, Akili speaks Swahili, or she has whole Swahili episodes. And then there's like an alternative cartoon, Ubongo Kids, I think, and it has science, math, and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of it is in Swahili. It's I mean, yeah, it's nationalism done right. There's also another cartoon. I can't remember what it's called, but yeah, Tanzania kind of has that kind of stuff already. Now, I'm not going to say Tanzania. I mean, I don't know. I do think that Tanzania is better than Nigeria, but I'm not going to say that it's better than Nigeria. But when you return to Nigeria and what it really is, at its core, and why the class, the upper echelon, would be saying we need to instill some patriotism in these people, while the unemployment rate is like 60%. The youth unemployment rate is probably 80%. It is like who knows what it's going to be. But one thing I could say is that it's probably not going to be in the indigenous languages. It's probably going to be, maybe it's going to be in pidgin, maybe, but maybe more probably in English. And in being in English, not having that kind of versatility that you see with Akili, and then of course, if the government is involved in the way of, not necessarily making good cartoons, but in the way of, you know, promoting, let's say, their nationalism, or even possibly promoting their religion, you could run into trouble. Because I can tell you guys this: I went to Mombasa, Kenya, yes, the last week, and it was pretty interesting. But I got into this, a little nice hotel, and I put on a TV for my son, and there was a channel that it looked like it just had like Arab cartoons. right? And at some point, the cartoons stop, and it's all in Arabic, and I don't know why. My son wanted to watch it, and I was like, all right, whatever, who cares, right? And then at some point, it seems like they were just reading a prayer. Like they were just straight up reading a prayer on uh, on television, you know. I'm saying this to say that you really got to know what the content is, because it was a children's program, right? You had the little cute cartoons and they were speaking in Arabic and you don't know what they're saying, and then eventually it just and I think at some point you hear them maybe making some prayers or saying stuff, but of course you don't know what they're saying because it's in Arabic. And then eventually it's just straight up, I don't know, could be just reading the Quran, like just straight up. And the thing about Nigeria is that it is very very divided. It's one of those countries where when you say Africa's tribal, you're talking about Nigeria, right? And it's dominated by the north, which has like a predominantly Muslim population, and some of the Muslim population there are a violent Muslim population, right? They have like terrorists inside, all that kind of stuff. Because again, Islam is not necessarily violent, but Nigeria, you know, in certain countries it is. You know what I mean? Just like Christianity is violent in certain countries, right? And Judaism is definitely violent in certain countries. But but what I'm saying is that yeah, you have that. So now you got to ask yourself, well, if the state is involved with the creation of a cartoon, and the state is also the one that's suppressing people, the state is also the one that's corrupt. The state is also the one that's giving these youth a disadvantage at life, because of their corruption, right? If that state is also responsible for making content, making children's content, is it going to come out like in a key? Right? Or is it going to be like how the CIA gets involved in children's education in America, right? Or is America going to have a hand or an influence in the state education? Because one thing I could also say is that in America, or really really prolific, is that uh, we tend to just call each other the N word casually, you know. And I'm not saying the state was necessarily involved, but I'm also not going to say the state was necessarily involved, and that's what I'll say.
I appreciate that, Oni. In the chat, let me just go back for a second. In the chat, Real Black Gentleman's out there. He said that if the cartoons were more like comic books, a Captain Africa isn't a bad idea. I agree with that. Harsh Ali Podcast is out there. Says Nigeria way too tied to the WEF and the West. Would need to actually see the content produced. I agree with that too. Cheryl Easy E is out there saying greetings. Shout out to Cheryl. Thanks for coming through this week. And then Web came in. Web, I'll give you the wrench in 1 second. All right. If anyone wants to join the panel tonight, just click the link pinned to the top of the chat. You too can join. We're a few people short tonight. I don't know where Anthony went, but hopefully all is well with him. If there's no other thoughts on this prompt, let's just go to Shooter Breeze topic number 2 then.